Everyone, it's Crypto Granny Susie today. The date is the 23rd of July, and the time in the Netherlands is 12:23 p.m. Let's talk about the crypto market, what's happening, what main stories are coming out, and just where I think this market is going, just through different stories and technically as well. Before we start, I wish to say I hope everyone's looking after themselves, looking after their beautiful animals, their beautiful husbands and wives and children and the environment, just to make this a better place, and also looking after other people, animals in the world as well, and the environment. So let's have a look at this crypto market. Very exciting market at the moment. Volume is huge. We're seeing a lot of players, new players coming into this market, buying Bitcoin, buying Doge, buying XRP, buying Ethereum, buying who else? Lots of others, Link as well. So it is very exciting. So grab yourself a cup of coffee and we will start with live coin watch. Won't be a sec. So according to market cap, according to live coin watch market cap, the market is at the moment currently at 3.843 trillion. Volume is huge, 167 bill, and liquidity is excellent, 9.612 bill. It tells you that money's coming into this market, and you can see it in a big way by the volume and by the high liquidity. When markets are selling down, we see that liquidity going down to about 2 bill because they're actually taking money out of the market, and that reduces that liquidity. But when money is coming in, it increases the liquidity, and the liquidity is very, very good indeed. So Bitcoin traded about 119,200 odd last night. It's at 118,221. We do know Michael Saylor was out there again buying more Bitcoin, like about 6,700 units of Bitcoin. He's now holding more Bitcoin than BlackRock, over 600,000 units of Bitcoin. And he's made a fortune by holding Bitcoin. I think his average entry price, golly, was about, from what I can remember, about 59,000 or something. Ethereum's at 3,658. We are finding a lot of corporate treasuries are starting to buy Ethereum. Square is out there buying Bitcoin as well as Ethereum. But also we find another company that was buying quite a bit of Ethereum, SharkLink, has expanded its corporate treasury and now has bought another 79 odd thousand of Ethereum and expands its corporate treasury to buy. That's holding actually 361,000 nearly of Ethereum, which is massive. Another story today, PNC, one of the major banks in America, is partnering with Coinbase to launch their Bitcoin and crypto service. And we're seeing banks everywhere doing this now. We saw JP Morgan doing it, and remember years ago, Jamie Dimon said that, the CEO of JP Morgan said that Bitcoin was a scam. It was a Ponzi scheme. Now they've turned on their sword. And now they're starting to buy cryptocurrency, and they want to expand big time into cryptocurrency. And that's huge for this market as well. But we're seeing it right across the board in every country in the world. I mean, in my mind, crypto can only go up. I know you've got Robert Kowalski out there saying that he believes that the equity market's going to collapse and so is crypto. But I can't see it with crypto because, the market is still cheap at 3.845 trillion. It's really, really cheap. And people are still getting positioned in this market, not, only literally about 13% of the population of the world is invested in crypto. And, big corporates are still coming and now they're expanding their corporate treasury holdings. Whether it be XRP, we've seen also Litecoin, someone bought 500 mil of Litecoin, MEI Pharmaceutical, which is fabulous, but also Doge, right? We're seeing it with other coins as well, altcoins, not just Bitcoin and Ethereum. So this market's got a lot of growth in it as far as I'm concerned. Plus, if Mr. Trump decides to make it allowable for the 401ks to invest in crypto, this market's going to take off like a rocket, people. I mean, literally, they've done estimates on this 401k, the total balances are something like 43 trillion. And if Mr. Trump gives an executive order where people can actually now invest in crypto, whether it be 1 to 3% of their holdings in their 401k, it's going to bring 9 trillion to this market. 9 trillion. And yet the market cap at the moment is only 3.8. That is absolutely huge, okay? Seriously huge. XRP at $3.44. A lot of good stories out there about XRP. the CEO, Brad Garlinghouse, was talking and said that Ripple plans to capture up to 12% of Swift's current cross-border volume within 5 years. And that's going to be very interesting. As Swift has dominated international monetary transfers, it is a messaging system. It's a very old system back from the 1970s. But Swift, 11,500 banks are members of Swift. And that's out of probably about 50,000 banks globally in the world, and that's going to be big for Ripple. Okay, so he's saying that with our on-demand liquidity, and we use XRP as a bridging currency, then it can bypass pre-funded Nostro and Vostro accounts, and also they can do transactions within seconds rather than with low fees as well, and very cheap transactions compared to Swift, which is very, very expensive. Okay, so a lot of good information out there re XRP as well, but in my mind, XRP has already moved quite a bit already this year, and I think there's other coins that need to catch up. One being Binance, for example. Binance today, got through $800 US. It looks like to me it's targeting $1,000 at least. Technically, it's cheap, 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 people. Bananas are so cheap. It's a mega naut. They're making a fortune, right? An absolute fortune. Just like Binance, Tron is seriously cheap. Tron again has 200 million clients. XRP at best has 7 million clients. And yet Tron is still at 31 cents. It's just a joke where Tron is, to be honest. Whether you like Justin Sun or not, I think he's a genius. He's probably the first Chinese man that's ever going to go to the moon or to go out of space. He puts his money where his mouth is. And, he's created a system from Ethereum. He was originally on Ethereum, but 8 years ago he went and, did his own network being Tron. And look, what he's done is incredible. It's a cheap entry into this market. And it's a very, very, very profitable network, okay? Extremely profitable. Solana is at 197. Dodge looks pretty good technically at 25 cents. ADA is too high in my opinion. It's at 86 cents. Doesn't have a lot of clients or a lot of fee-paying clients. But Tron is the one, if you don't have a lot of money, buy Tron. Stellar seems very expensive to me where it is. It doesn't have a lot of clients. So what? It, integrated with PayPal the other day. But, Tron is integrated with PayPal. It's integrated with more clients and networks than ever than XOM, than Stellar, okay? Link is the standout as far as I'm concerned. I mean, even the big banks in Australia are using Link. JP Morgan's using Link. Every bank needs to use Link, right? Every corporate needs to use Link. Every cryptocurrency token and coin needs to use Link, and there's 35 million of them and going higher as we speak. A lot of good news stories re Haybar as well, Hedera, Hashgraph, simply because there's now ETFs that are being run for them as well, and we're seeing some very positive news for AVAX as well. Avalanche has put on more and more clients. Their number of holders has increased exponentially. Another one I think is a standout as well as BCH, very cheap compared to Bitcoin. If you look at the old relativities going way back when the last market rally, BCH was around $4,500. I mean, its high was 4,355, okay? Litecoin's another one I think will do very well, 117.47. Sunny Lu is now on the board, not Sunny Lu, Charlie Lee, who's the founder of Litecoin, is now on the board of MEI Pharmaceutical that bought for $500 million of Litecoin, okay? And my favorite meme is Pepe, which we keep an eye on. It's looking pretty good here at 4014. It looks like it wants to consolidate to move a lot higher, and the traders love Pepe. So let's take a break. Let's have a look at the technicals and see what we can glean from those. And then, I've got some news stories there, so please have a look at those as well. I hope you like my new format. Please press the subscribe button. I'll be doing probably a bit more YouTube this year just to, get my name out there and, tell you what's good to buy and everything else. But, anyway, let's take a pause, grab yourself a cup of coffee or wherever you are in the world, and we'll look at the technicals as well. Won't be a sec. The monthlies on Bitcoin, I do like to take it out and look at the longer time periods. So it takes out all the noise. As you can see, we've got a buy on Bitcoin here. The monthlies are basically saying if you take the length of this red here and put it up vertical, this is where Bitcoin could potentially go. And so my initial target for Bitcoin this year is 150,000 per unit, okay? And I do believe that those lofty figures that Michael Saylor's talking about, $1 million within 10 years, I believe Bitcoin will get there, okay? That's my view, right? If you look at this technically, Bitcoin looks very, very good on the monthly. We've got a buy in this thing. It's got this rounded smile happening. And, this thing looks like it can break out. Why would you want to sell, excuse me, Bitcoin when there's only one Bitcoin in the world and there's billions of people and corporates that want it, okay? It's as simple as that. So my target for Bitcoin this year is about 150,000. Let's have a look at Ethereum. Ethereum, I believe, will underperform Bitcoin, and it has so far this year, but it's starting to get some corporate volume being done in it, and we're starting to see a few more people buying Ethereum as well. Don't forget, Ethereum does make money, a lot of money, with holding, providing a platform for stable coins, okay? So if we take this to the weekly on Ethereum, we have got a buy on this. I do believe it'll lag Bitcoin, as I said. If you go back to live coin watch, right, Ethereum's high was an all-time high, was 4,861. It's still over $1,000 away from that all-time high, where Bitcoin's much closer to its high, and so is XRP, right? So Ethereum is lagging. Also, if we look at the percentage for a year, Ethereum's only up 3.76, where Bitcoin was up 76,000, right? So I'd rather hold a Bitcoin than Ethereum. That's my personal preference, or XRP over and above Ethereum. I believe Ethereum is too expensive for what it is, and I believe Binance is really the one that should be taking over Ethereum, as well as Link as well. So let's go back to the charts here. Ethereum looks quite bullish though on the chart, has broken out of that downside. Needs to take out on the weekly around, what do we got? On the weekly, it needs to take out 4,139, okay, on the weekly. But it still looks pretty good technically now that it's broken out of that downtrend, okay? So I'm expecting, Ethereum to move up, but not as much as other alts and Bitcoin, okay? So let's have a look at XRP. I'm sorry to say, but I do believe XRP is overbought here, people. I think, if you've got some profit, take some profit just to be cautious. But look, technically it is strong. There's no doubt about that. But, it has performed 400% in the last, 6 months. And that's a lot of performance, okay? When we've got things like Chainlink that are putting on a lot of clients. I'm not saying that XRP is not, but Chainlink's putting on a lot more that are a lot more profitable, okay? So for me, if I was an XRP buyer, I'd like to see it probably below, I don't know, around 320, 310 to buy some more. We did buy some at 229, and we were lucky because we got that big push up. But just short term, it looks like we pull back a little bit. And, then you'd be buying any pullback with XRP. So let's have a look at Link, my favorite. Let's have a look at Tron. Now, Link, as you can see, has broken the downtrend on the monthly. It's about to move up. It is a very, very cheap coin, has done a lot of consolidation. And even on the monthly, you can see all this consolidation, right? And we've got this round smile. This thing could break out very quickly, and it could break out. It looks a lot stronger than the XRP chart and the Ethereum chart. It could break out very quickly to over $50. It is cheap, people. Cheap, cheap, cheap. Everyone is using Link, and they need to, okay? And JP Morgan have just put it on Link for their network, okay, for their security network and their pricing oracle. At 1891, this is as cheap as chips, seriously. And so is Tron, okay? I'll reiterate my story again. Tron and Link are cheap, 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 and so is BCH. If we look at Tron, to me, it's the most bullish chart I've seen for a long, long time. Now, someone was talking about, Peter Thiel was talking about Ethereum having a bullish chart and XRP, but I got to tell you, Tron to me has the most bullish chart of all of them, right? If we go to just take it out to the 6 months, this is bull, right? This is a massive bull chart. And, this length here from all the reds could go up, right? Tron, in my mind, should be $1 or more. It's too cheap where it is. Actually, it should be a lot higher than $1. It should be at XRP levels. This is a chance to get into a very cheap coin that has the goods, the networks, has the clients, over 200 million clients, and people pay fees to use its network. But it looks very, very good to me. Okay, let's look at the monthlies. I mean, the monthlies look even better, right? This thing's going to take off like a rocket very soon, okay? That is a very, very strong chart. Whether you like Tron or not, they've got the goods, and it's extremely strong fundamentally and also technically. All right, what else we can look at here? BCH. Make sure you've got the spot crypto. Right, BCH, people have been selling this, but it's now in the uptrend. It's broken that downtrend on the monthly. And this thing could fly high, right? Its relativity is to Bitcoin. It's low, low, low in this cycle compared to Bitcoin. Whereas its relativities last time around, Bitcoin was lower. If we remember and remind ourselves, Bitcoin in the last rally was about 69,000. And don't forget, BCH got to 4,300. Now BCH is only 527, and yet we see Bitcoin at 118,000. There is catch up here. Okay. Now, yes, the founder is Roger, what's his name? Roger Vander something or other. Some people don't like the guy, and that could be playing on BCH for the investor point of view in terms of confidence, right? But it's a very, very cheap coin to get into, and it does have the goods, very fast. It's faster than Bitcoin in terms of transactions and everything else, and can do more, even with lightning speed, okay? So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a very cheap entry point indeed. And let's check out VeChain, another cheap crypto. Again, Sunny Lou's behind this one. And, they could do a deal with KuCoin. They could do a deal with Tron. They could do a deal with, Binance, for example. But it's one that really has underperformed. But it stands alone, VCoin, okay? VeChain, right? It stands alone. It actually looks at it's got a network technology system that, can actually guarantee that, food is food, that, this is not a fraudulent good, for example, that a leather bag is a leather bag. Also, it's looking at the environmental issue as well, and using this technology to clean up the environment. Say, say rubbish in the oceans and things like this. Its technology is quite amazing. And if you look at its client list, it has some very, very big clients indeed, right? I do like VeChain very much, but it has underperformed for such a long time, right? And we're keeping an eye on this. We do hold some VeChain. At the moment, when you look at the monthlies, it's just been consolidating for a long time. Even in the last rally, it was up at, 25 cents or something. Been consolidating for a long time. The minute this thing breaks out, we're going to buy some more of this thing, okay? It's like a sleeping tiger ready to pounce, right? It hasn't got people's imagination yet, but it's such a great story, VeChain. I've been looking at this coin for a long time, okay? We go back to Live Coin Watch. Let's have a look. Where is VeChain? Here we go. So we go back to Live Coin Watch. Its last high, its all-time high was at 26 cents, right? This is a cheap entry, people. It's really, really cheap. It's been around for nearly 8 years. I wouldn't say load up like, big time. You just, in terms of your portfolio, you probably have 3% of VeChain in your portfolio, right? But it's one that's very, very much underperformed. And we're just keeping an eye on it to see, if it moves, right? A couple of other things we're in Fetch, ASI. This is very cheap at the moment, even after they had a merger between 3 other AIs, and, the AI itself got to 347 again, that this entry point at 77 cents is ultra, ultra cheap. Plus, we're keeping an eye on Crow because we used to own Crow. Also, a couple of others that were in a Conflicts. Conflicts has done very well in the last couple of days, okay? In the last 7 days, it's up 72%. We do own Conflux. They're increasing their network. They are a cryptocurrency that the Chinese will accept in China because it's fully regulated and, has all the proper pricing oracles and everything else. It's a layer 1 cryptocurrency technology. We did buy some a little bit too early at 29 cents, but that doesn't matter. I'm still very confident this one will do extremely well. Let's have a look at Pepe technically as well. Love Pepe as a meme. It does have the hearts of the big fund managers, okay, and the big traders. And on the monthly, this is breakout, right? I do believe Pepe can go to its previous high, and that was like 4 digits, 2682. We go back to live coin watch. Let's have a look at Pepe and just see what Pepe's done in the last couple of weeks. Bear with me for a minute. So if we have a look at Pepe, in the last 7 days, it's only been up 6%. In the last 30 days, it's up 55. Year to date, it's up 12.5%, right? This thing can break out very quickly, this one. All-time high was 2.8. I think it's going to go there. I really do. This thing could double with, so quickly in terms of literally double overnight, okay? These sort of things can move very quickly. I do believe that they will start to burn some of their supply. There's a lot of tokens on issue, but we've seen that with a lot of coin, okay, in tokens particularly, where tokens do, are burnt, right? We saw it with Fund recently. They've burnt 12 million of their tokens. Sui has been burning a lot of tokens as well, and Pepe could come out any minute and burn half that token supply. With that, that's going to push this thing up even further, and I believe they will do that, okay? They will burn token. And that will be very bullish for the whales as well. We are seeing whales starting to nibble to buy and waiting for the next move up. So I'm quite bullish Pepe in saying that. A couple of others that we're keeping an eye on too, obviously a Litecoin, Hedera, Link we're invested in, Tezos we used to be invested in. It did rally the other day 41%. So we don't own it at the moment, but it has been one that we owned previously. There's still incredibly cheap coin out there, and Tezos is one of them, okay? If we look at the all-time high was $9, and it's still at 93 cents. I mean, that's cheap, 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 cheap. Does have a lot of supply, more than Tron. So, that might be keeping it down a bit. Let's have a look at Tron in terms of supply as well, because Tron is cheap, people, so cheap. Okay, what do we got? We've got total supply of 95 for 94, 95, say 86 is circulating supply. I expect big things for Tron this year. I think it's going to go a lot higher than where it is. It's been capped at 32 cents technically, but once it breaks that, you get to 45 cents very quickly, and that's its all-time high, okay? But I think this thing goes higher because it has a lot of clients, okay? And it's making a fortune. Now, all Justin Sun has to do it. He's no fool. All he has to do is burn half of this total supply, and this thing's going to take off like a rocket. And I think he will, because his mate CZ and their great mates is burning coin every day. So don't forget, coin is when you have a network. Token is when it's not a network, right? It uses someone else's network. I mean, Bernard's only got 149 million of coin, and they could easily burn half of that. I mean, CZ years ago said they're going to bring that down to 100 mil, okay? So, these are some of the big ones that I expect are going to move. I think this market's so cheap. It is an absolute joke, people, really. Any dip you buy with your ears pinned back, I believe you will make money out of it, because this market is cheap. It's cheaper than the stock market, and hardly anyone's invested in it. And this rally hasn't even started. As I said, the risk is that you sell your coin and tokens too early. This rally has not even started. Anyway, enough of me. Please look at my news stories and click on subscribe. I hope you're well, looking after your family, your beautiful friends, your beautiful kids, beautiful animals, and other people's animals and people in the world and the environment, just to make this world a better place. It's getting tougher and tougher for everyone, but at least we've got to maintain our empathy. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you very soon. Thank you.